Ashley, if you do a roll call, we'll add as people come in
Sure thing. Chair Tom Farrell,
here.
Wallace Grainer,
Here.
Mo Goyle,
Here.
and Ronald Hasso.
Here.
We also have City Administrator Amber Lewis, Development Services Director Carrie Kaler, as well as Sean Garrettson with Pegasus. And if you are joined as just iPhone and you are a member of the board, please let us know.
Okay. All right. Public comments on any citizens wishing to address the comprehensive plan strike force for items not on the agenda but were received at this time. Do we have anybody that would like to do so? If you could, just raise your hand. And Ashley, if you don't mind, if you'll remind people how to raise their hand, both on the phone and on their computer.
Sure. If you're joined by mobile device, at the bottom of your screen should be an option for more, where you can go and raise your hand. If you are calling in, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Great. Item number 2 is discussion possible action on the minutes from the August 19th, 2021 meeting. And we don't have the minutes, so we won't have to do that today. So how about that? And discussion possible action on the minutes from the August 16th meeting. Actually, we do have the
meeting, the minutes from the 9th.
yes, I got those mixed up.
Not able to get the 16th in there.
Well, let's just table both of them and we'll do both of them next time. How's that? Oh, we need to go. Ashley, would you like me to go ahead and just take up the one for
No, that's fine. We can do them both. We can do them both next week.
Right. Because I think we had a couple of corrections on the 9th that I got notice of, and I'd like to make sure we get those in for you, if you don't mind. Okay. Let's see. Give time for David and Brian to get here, and I think that we also have 2 more that have indicated that they're going to be here. So we'll wait. So number 4 is discussion, possible action, review and approve elements of the comprehensive plan. John, if we would start with that, and we may have to go back over some of it as people come into the meeting, but let's go ahead and get started.
Sure. Hey, Tom, if it's okay with you, before we jump into those individual chapters, I think it's worthwhile for all the other Strike Force Committee members to know that you and I and Ashley, we met with Brooke last week to talk about the economic development chapter and also the implementation chapter. So I'm going to be working on those this week. So you're not going to see those yet. I just wanted to give you that background. And then today, I think it's just important you guys know this background going on, but Ashley went ahead and created a Dropbox for all of the chapters and some of the other resources, appendices, et cetera. Today, we had a good call with her and Tom and Bowie, just to kind of coordinate all the little pieces. And so I spent today kind of going back into some of the chapters and incorporating some of Bowie's additions into what had already been done. And so what you have in your packet is not the most recent chapters. Ashley, I wanted to ask you, you might have mentioned this today, but was the intention that you wanted to just share those chapter folders with the rest of the Strike Force as well?
We definitely could. Maybe right now they seem to have a lot of, past drafts and stuff in the document folders. Maybe we kind of make sure we have an updated final or most updated version of each and then share it. I'm open to whatever you think.
Okay, so you'll notice, Ashley, when you go back into the folders, any of the updated chapters I just added today, will say final draft in caps with today's date on it. So I'm going to do that with any of the chapters that are what I think are sort of the final drafts. There's still going to be a few, minor things, but so for those of you who really want to get into the editing of those documents, I think that's going to be the place to go for those. So, for today, the Rollingwood Comprehensive Plan is let me see, the 5 items that I think are on your agenda. The Rollingwood Comprehensive Plan history, that was a history section that Bowie put together. We've copied and then we've put that into the community profile chapter over the other history section that was in there. That chapter, I think, is now ready for a final review. The facilities and infrastructure chapter, we also I integrated Bowie's information, and also in every chapter they're suggesting what tables to use from the survey. So you'll start seeing some of the survey charts that are related to facilities, et cetera. I did have two questions that are still outstanding on the facilities. I saw Ashley pointed out to me today, Amber, the files that you had put in there, you wanted to share related to wastewater, LUE, et cetera. Those are in there. I'm not sure what to make of those in terms of, I just wasn't part of that discussion when you guys were talking about that. And I'm wondering if either somebody on the committee or somebody with staff can kind of summarize what needs to be said about those. Those were, I think, mostly Excel files and that sort of thing. And I just wasn't quite sure what to do about that. And the same with, I need, whether or not, Tom, that's you or Ashley, exactly understanding where the discussion was about water, wastewater, drainage, and policies. There's still some policies that I'd love for you guys to add to that section. So that you'll see there's, a couple of highlighted sections in that that I'm requesting some of that information from.
I saw that. And let me say, I will be glad to help you with the utility side of that.
Okay.
When it comes to the, I think what my suggestion would be on the infrastructure needs part of that is that we rely on the survey data for that. And I'll go through that, and I'll go through our conversations with that. I have notes that I can give you, Sean, on that, and I can do so tomorrow if that's a good time for you. You tell me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Tomorrow and Wednesday are days spent on Rollingwood, just kind of working on the economic development ability. And so anything you send me for edits, I'll start incorporating onto that.
Let me jump back a little bit, and this was not on yours. This was on the history part of that. Did have a couple of comments that I received on the history. Ryan, are you on here? Ryan's not on here yet. David is here. The record will show that. David Smith. Ryan had a couple of comments that he would like to include.
Were those distributed, Tom?
I don't think I did, because when it came to me, it did not go to everybody, and I'm reluctant always to send things out that people don't okay for me to send that. So, but I'll get an okay from Ryan and send that out. And let me see if I can find the gist of it, which I'm going to talk about anyway. Yes, here we go.
And the revised history edit did just go out to the committee not that long ago, a few minutes before the meeting started.
This involves a chapter of Rollingwood that pertains to many of us. Rollingwood's original deed restrictions would prohibit me from living here, would prohibit many of us from living here. And it was set up the same as all the other subdivisions in Austin were at that time.
Well, it was set up basically, it basically is a copycat of basically restrictive covenants that were pervasive in deeds nationwide, and commonplace in deeds nationwide that were basically overturned by a Supreme Court case that rendered them any deed restriction discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, all to be unenforceable and illegal. So it's not just an Austin issue, and it's certainly not just a Rollingwood issue.
No, and I want to say I replied to this and basically said, look, the real reason that Rollingwood was founded is the simple reason they didn't want to pay Austin taxes, and they didn't want to abide by Austin's regulations. The rest of that was incidental to that. I hope it was not designed for that, but I don't want to sugarcoat it, because it's otherwise I wouldn't be here. Many of us wouldn't be here if those restrictions were still in place.
I feel like we're opening up a can of worms here that we don't need to do, and we're basically taking what was done in a private land transaction and attributing it to the city, and particularly, attributing to the city at a time where none of us were here, and something that was a pervasive practice nationwide. And in terms of kind of the city history, in terms of a comprehensive plan, I'm just not sure this is helpful, frankly.
Well, I don't have a problem, David, about addressing it, but I'd like for it to be, if you look at what I wrote or what I had edited, I think that probably covers a lot of the issue that we have on that. I think that's actually the truth that occurred. I knew some of the original founding members, and we actually had quite a number of people that were in our founding membership of Rollingwood that the deed restrictions wouldn't let them live here. They just didn't enforce it, which is
Right.
good.
Well, and no one did, but I mean, I think we're inviting other criticisms. Personally, I don't think it really needs to go in here because it involves private land transactions and land sales. Also, if and I'm looking at the edited version of it, I guess now, but it's basically, it should say that we're commonplace nationwide. Because I mean, this happened, it wasn't a Central Texas issue. It wasn't an Austin issue. This was a nationwide common practice that, I mean, it doesn't, separate us from any other community, really. I mean, it doesn't make our community unique in any other place in the country. And I just think it's putting something in there, and I don't know if the purpose is to try to, make ourselves feel good or whatever. But I think we're opening up a can of worms. I don't want to go much further because, there's, I'll just leave it at that for now.
So I added a parenthetical right after that point that just says, this was a nationwide common practice at the time. And, Tom, this is a question for you as a chair, as we're editing these entire chapters. Do you, and especially when we're at this point where it's deserves a final edit, do you want to maybe ask if there's one person on the committee that wants to kind of run through the final edit?
I was going to
Otherwise, editing that by committee is a little challenging.
Maybe we do it by chapter and do that. And I'll take on the history part of that.
It's now the whole community profile chapter. I just want to be clear on that. It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just that's right.
Okay. Yeah, and Tom, kind of where I'm going with this is basically those deed restrictions were commonplace at the time, but as you just said, there's there's a lot of folks that were instrumental in the founding of the government, the city of Rollingwood, who, if those deed restrictions were enforced, were instrumental in founding the city. But because the deed restrictions were ignored, it allowed those people to be involved. So, if we're going to talk about, a private party in a land transaction put a racist deed restriction in there, shouldn't we also be telling the history of the people who, basically ignored that deed restriction and became part of founding the city government anyways? It kind of becomes this,
Yeah.
okay, what are we going to highlight? Whatever. And, also it begs the question of, well, if we're really, if we really feel like it's important to put, this thing about, oh, these deed restrictions are in there, then it kind of begs the question, the comprehensive plan of, well, if you guys are, atoning for this former racist behavior, why aren't you guys talking about affordable housing in Rollingwood?
Yeah.
It just opens the door to, kind of a Pandora's box. I'm not sure we want to go down that road.
If I thought it was founded for that reason, I would change my mind, but I know why it was founded. We didn't want to pay Austin taxes, and we didn't want to pay, I wasn't here. I'm not that old. I'm pretty damn old, but I'm not quite that old. And we didn't want regulations. So anyway, well, I will, Sean, to answer your question, I'm going to volunteer to take up the community profile chapter, which would include the history and all of that. So
Okay.
as you go through this, when you get to a point where you want somebody to volunteer to edit a chapter, a part of it, just sing out and we'll see if we can get somebody to do it.
Okay.
I'd like to add that if we don't include this in the history, that's fine. I think I lived here definitely more than a year before I heard about this history verbally from a neighbor or two. I had no idea beforehand. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
I understand that this is a hard topic globally, right? People are going to think about atonement or feeling good when other people like me are like, I just want to know, some informal history. I'm not looking for this to be Wikipedia about Rollingwood. I think the edits start to go down the path of like qualifiers and legalese, right? Then do we need a comma after every single statement saying what the scope of it was? The city tax, escape taxes and regulations, comma, which occurred in many subdivisions nationwide, period. Also, racist deed restrictions, comma, which occurred in many nationwide. So I would rather just keep it simple if we're going to leave it in there. I understand why if we leave it out, because it just can lead to David's point, a big mess. And then suddenly the whole freaking, apologies, the whole strike force is sidetracked.
Yeah.
And that, for a long time. I think there's value in trying to include it because these are the kind of things that I think for a long, long time where nobody even made the effort to include it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very interested in the history.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, but I'm not also sure if this is the right place for it and this is the right form. But when I Googled this a week or two ago at the last meeting, I couldn't find anything online,
Yeah.
which I was surprised. I saw KXA and a few other histories of Rollingwood, nothing. So if I hadn't heard from, Buck and a few other people, I would have still been in the dark.
Yeah.
Well, and Mo, I mean, that's partially because if it was in the KXA and history of Rollingwood, it'd have to be in the KXA and history of Terrytown and Pemberton and Briker Woods and Rosedale and everything else. And
yeah,
I mean, you're right. I mean, and part of it is, kind of what I struggle with is, I mean, it was at a time where, I mean, a lot of these things are really broad, discriminates against Catholics and, people of Hispanic descent, Jewish descent. I mean, a lot of these things are, depending on the community, are like super broad and super discriminatory. And I don't think anyone's debating that. It's kind of like, how much are you going to include about it? If it were pervasive and if it were, kind of government sponsored and government enforced, I'd be kind of like, yeah, we need to include that. I don't know. I'm with you. I'm not sure it belongs in the comprehensive plan. I mean, and it almost seems like to me, if it's something that the city council wanted to pick up and take a look at and do something with, great. I'm just not sure that we need to try to, put in a comprehensive plan that's
Well-
supposed to be a more forward-looking document.
Well, keep in mind, the city of Rollingwood never instituted ordinances in that regard. This was a private land transaction, a deed restriction on the subdivisions that were done by developers. And really, I guess there were maybe 2 developers for the most part in Rollingwood, but Hatley was, of course, the main one.
Yeah.
And I think he just boilerplated whatever was around on that.
I blame the
don't-
lawyers.
Well, I always do.
I blame
too.
the lawyers.
They usually cause more problems. But I'm not interested in, if I thought that this was the reason that the city was founded, that would be something, one point, but I'm just convinced that that's not true. I did know some of the founding people, and they were, like one of them was, I know, Catholic, and wasn't supposed to be here, but was. But that's kind of an interesting situation on that. So let me work on how to do that. I think we should mention, in my opinion, we should mention it, but it should be I don't want to qualify it. I'm not trying to justify it, but I think we should probably mention that, and then but it's not the reason that we're here. And it was not a city issue. Sean, have you dealt with this before?
Yeah. If you're talking about in this history section, I think David brings up the sort of legal sensitivity of things and fair housing, and some cities don't want to open up that can of worm if it's not a can that needs to be opened up.
Well, and that's what I worry about is, someone,
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to be blunt, because all I can be is blunt. We have a lot of people in Rollingwood that have said, hell no, we don't want multifamily. No, we don't want multifamily because we don't want people in multifamily housing here. And, it's you clear something like this, someone like, and I realize this open meeting, but, someone with, somewhere could say, well, you're pointing out this part of these racist warranty deeds, but this is just a different kind of subtle bigotry, not talking about affordable housing, not talking about multifamily and beating out it, opposed to it. Whereas I believe that the people saying we don't want multifamily housing is because, look, we don't want to put strain on the system, we don't want to do everything else, but in certain hands it can certainly be misconstrued, and a narrative can kind of spring forth out of this that I'm not sure anyone wants to see, because I don't think the people in Rollingwood who said no, they don't want to see multifamily housing, it's because we don't want certain types of people here. But
So
I
Tom, just so I am clear on this, so you are going to be the one editing both the facilities chapter and the community profile chapter.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I'll make sure to get you the most recent versions of both of those this evening. I was just kind of going through the list of all the different chapters. The future land use and the mobility chapters are pretty much done, but Bowie is going through them and the survey data and adding some survey charts to both of those chapters to add some community sentiment to both of those chapters. And then, as I said earlier, I'll be working on the economic development and implementation chapters this week. Bowie thinks that they can have the future land use and the mobility survey input by Wednesday, and I can go ahead and input and do a final edit of both of those chapters. So I think those chapters can definitely be done for final review by the end of this week as well. So I really feel like, right now, the introduction, the community profile, the current land use, the parks and rec and facilities are all sort of in that final review. The parks and rec, they also added in some, or they suggested some survey charts. I dropped those in. I think that is also final. The current land use chapter, I think the city kind of looked through that and said that it's actually good for right now. No need to make any edits on that. So I think that's kind of where we're at with things. I'm happy to go through anything in more detail.
So you want a volunteer on each of these chapters to be the main that's doing the main part of that with you from an editing standpoint.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, that's a decision for you all to make.
So we've got, I've got two of them here I'm going to do. The future land use, I think I'm going to, since I don't think, Ryan, are you on here yet? I'm going to volunteer Ryan, since he's not here, to be the, to edit that with you.
Okay.
I think he was most involved in that.
All right. I'll make sure to send that out. And Ashley, if you can help me, I think I have his email. I'll reach out to you if I don't, and I'll copy you and Tom on that too.
Great.
The two that we have left, I guess, are the parks and the, well, the financial part of that. Brooke is going to want to be involved in that. She'll be back next week to be able to do that. So we got three. The residential portion, we have I've got some information you had asked me for that I will provide for you tomorrow on that as we go through it. But if anybody would like to volunteer, I've got two chapters that we need to get somebody that would volunteer for, Parks and Rec and the residential survey. And just the residential part, I'm going to be working with Sean because I've got my notes for that I'm going to give him. He was not at that meeting. So I'm going to give him that tomorrow so he can start drafting on that. And so, and David, since you've kind of been involved in the park a bit, I don't think that would probably be prudent for you to be on that chapter. I'd like for you to be on the mobility chapter, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd love to do the mobility chapter and work on that, especially since you've already volunteered Ryan for the other, and mobility was something that was really important to Ryan and I. So I'd love to do that.
Okay.
I just heard my name volunteered. I'm sorry, I'm late.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Happens.
We're all done here. We just wrapped up. We really
Is this
appreciate
what
it.
happens when you're late? You get volunteered.
Exactly. Exactly.
Voluntold is what we use.
So what did you sign me up for, Tom?
I signed you up to help edit the future land use.
Sure, whatever you need.
There
To
we
be
go.
clear, Ryan, to be clear, to be the only final editor of the future land use chapter. So I will, you might have missed this, but Bowie is going to work on the future land use and mobility chapter survey input. They'll send that to me. I'll finalize both of those chapters. David and Ryan, when I finalize those, I'll send you a copy of that.
Thank
It
you,
should be
Sean.
like Wednesday evening, I would think, something like that.
Thanks.
Yep.
So right now, just to bring us up to date, Sean, by the end of this week, we should have a draft at least of every chapter.
Yes.
So
And we should have actually final drafts of everything except the economic development and implementation chapter.
right. And we'll have that by Wednesday or Thursday.
I think I said Friday noon earlier today, so don't you push me. All right.
There was a little bit of difference on that. I just want to make sure that we can all try to wrap this up on this next meeting, where we at least have I won't say final draft of everything, but a preliminary final draft. That's kind of misnomer, but we'll kind of go with that term if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Ryan, I've got, while I've got you, I'm going to back up just a little bit. We were talking about the history chapter, and I've got some wording that I think will cover both of our issues that I should have already sent that to you. And I hope it will. I don't want to get I don't want to rehash that too much. And if it's okay, Ryan, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow, and maybe you and I can discuss that where we were, so we don't go back over that. If you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
That's okay. That's sorry. So Parks and Rec and single family. I'm gonna help Ryan. I'm gonna help Sean work on that a little bit. Sean, were you drafting that?
Tom, are you referring to the single family section that needs to be inserted into the future land use chapter?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you were just going to get a couple bullets on that together and send it to me. I was going to add that in.
Right. Okay. That it'll be tomorrow morning before I get a chance to do it, but I'll be glad to send that to you.
That'll be great.
If anybody else has any other bullet points, if you would send those in, and I'll send mine to Ashley so that we can kind of cover there.
Tom, did somebody volunteer, or you volunteer somebody for the Parks and Rec editing?
Let's see, who have we had that has been, Ashley, maybe you can help me with this. We've had several discussions on the park and on our trails and that sort of thing. And who has been pretty active in that? You recall offhand? I love to put Ashley on the spot like this.
No, I don't. We do have, I guess, our park commission, I guess, liaison or, representative that might be good for Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Who's that?
That is, I'm sorry, y'all, I've got my minutes up.
Isn't it David Raymond?
It is.
Yes, and he actually hasn't been to the last couple meetings, has he, Tom?
No, he was on holiday, so we're gonna have to.
And yeah, maybe we can reach out to him.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him to do that. Okay. It's a good reason to show up, so you don't get volunteered, or Ryan, in your case, to be timely. Could have been worse. I had 2 or 3 things I was going to volunteer you for since you weren't here.
It's my fault. I will accept responsibility.
Okay. Sean, what other chapters do we have to put in there? The mobility, we've got that covered with David. We got, Mo, do you want to do one? Would you work on the, Ryan?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I was asking Mo if
Okay.
he would work with the residential single family with Ryan on that.
I'll do anything I can. I don't know if he may have stepped away.
I think he stepped off. Smart move. Or maybe he's just there, just ignoring me. That happens too.
It sounds like you just assigned him.
Yeah, we'd do that.
And
We'll
Tom,
ask him to do it.
Tom, I just wanted to be clear. So you're going to send me the information on the single family residential. I'm going to bring that into the future land use, add in Bowie's survey information, finalize that future land use chapter, and then I'll send that out to Ryan and Mo.
And
Okay.
And specifically on Mo, I'd like to be the single family residential side of that.
Okay.
So Ron, you've been to a lot of meetings. You have a chapter, you tell me a chapter you're interested in, and we'll go from there. what other chapters do we have? To
What's
go
left?
on that, Sean?
Nobody has really jumped on the implementation chapter. And that's going to primarily be a kind of a summary of all the main policies for every chapter. And let me see, the economic development chapter, I think you said Brooke is going to be kind of looking at that.
Yes,
I think that's it outside of the current land use and introduction chapter.
okay. The implementation, I think, that is the key chapter in the whole thing, in my view, along with the land use and the mobility part. That's the most important chapters to me. I know you want one person to help edit that, but I will tell you on the implementation, I think you're going to need more than one. Now, the current land use, Ron, if you could help with that, if you could edit
Okay.
that, I think that would probably be a good spot to start with. I'm guessing that there may be, let me give some, we don't have that done yet, Sean.
The implementation?
So let me look at it first, and then let's figure out how we go about with that. That's I know a lot about how it works, and I know several of us do, but that would be something that I think that we should kind of look at that from a number of different ways on that.
For sure. And I'd also love to have, Amber take a look at that as well. There might be some specific things that, she might want to add into that too.
Okay, and I can work with them on that. Wally, I don't want to leave you out because I know that's not a good thing to do.
The only thing is, I would like to see the draft section of the economic development and the land use, just so I can read it as it is at this point.
Okay, great. And let me just say, from a procedural standpoint, what I would like to do is, as we go through these and you get a final draft, if you send those out, we'll make the comments back to Ashley, and she'll give those out, so we'll know whether we can how we end up putting those together on that. Does that make sense, Wally?
Yes,
From standpoint. And Ashley, I think you can do that. You've got that set up fairly well right now, do you not?
I think so, as long as we're clear, when the comments come back, and then how we're incorporating those and how we're reviewing those comments, but I'm happy to send them out for sure.
Right.
Yeah, Ashley, we may want to just chat maybe Wednesday afternoon after I've finalized these other two chapters. We may want to go ahead and delete a couple of the older drafts just to kind of avoid confusion and stuff, but I'm happy to talk through that with you.
Sure, that sounds great.
And Patty said that she would have her chapters Wednesday. Is that right?
That's correct.
Good. Okay. Okay.
Tom, this is Ryan. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Okay. On procedural, and again, I apologize if I missed it. I had a couple things. The first is that, are we going to have the opportunity for the entire package to be posted and with plenty of time for everybody to read it all before we as a commission vote on it? Because a lot of this stuff is getting, and I know it's just simply the process, and nobody's at fault, but a lot of it's getting circulated like right before meetings, and it's really hard for us to give it the depth of review that it probably deserves. So that's one question. And then secondly, are we going to have we talked about having a town hall type thing once we had a package that we were tentatively ready to share with the community. Are we still planning on doing that?
Yes, both of them. And what I'd like to do is, when we get all this together, which I think let's just call it the preliminary draft that we'll have next week. That will be one package that we can look at and make comments on. And then at that time, I'd like to have one other meeting. We finalize our draft and send that out and have a town hall, and I'll schedule a town hall meeting at that time. It'll be after Memorial Day, obviously, right now.
Labor Day?
Labor Day, excuse me. Thinking of Afghanistan, my memorial. So, anyway, that's Ryan, does that sound like that works for everybody?
Yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody has notice with enough time to actually kind of dive into it, because it sounds like we're getting to the meat of this where we really do want everybody to have unlike me today, to have an informed perspective.
Well, a lot of this came in, quite frankly, Friday and today, and I was, it was difficult for everybody to catch up, and just drop what they were doing and do that. So we would have to kind of back up and I wanted to go over what we could today, but and any of the documents we have, if anybody has any comments, I would love to take the time to discuss them today, but otherwise we can kind of go from there. One thing I would like to go over is the residential summary and make sure that that is satisfactory for everybody from the standpoint of doing putting together our residential section of the land use plan. And it's fairly simple. So I think we can, what I had done is ask Bowie to kind of go through and do a residential summary of the bullet points that were in the last survey that we did. Sean, I don't believe there was anything in your original survey that would contradict anything that we've looked at on this second survey for our residential. Do you?
Not that I've seen.
Good. So let me kind of go through that. The bullet points, which I asked them to do just bullet points on that. They wanted to, the residential deals, tree canopy is a big item. I couldn't find that there was enough support for a estate lots one way or the other, frankly. That was kind of a draw, in my opinion, based on the survey results we had. Setbacks, regulating our setbacks, that was a no-brainer. Everybody wants to keep our setbacks. Do not really want to do any smaller lots than what we have. Upzoning, we're not getting at. I was surprised that, frankly, that enough people that were opposed to that, but I'm not sure that that was that was an accurate reflection of what they were really thinking at the time. But that's my opinion. But I won't go about that. Granny Flats was an interesting deal. That's almost a 50-50 deal, and I think that's a big change for Rollingwood, frankly. We do have ordinances regarding our rental properties and how many residents that are not related can live in a single family residence in Rollingwood. So I'm not sure about that. Short-term rentals, everybody's against that. The vast majority is against that. So those were the takeaways I had. There was a fairly large number, and I tried to look at each one of the survey results. And there were a lot of people that responded to that they were concerned about the size of houses being built in Rollingwood. But those surveys also came back and said, keep the side setbacks and the trees. And so those were the issues that I saw as bullet points. I don't know if anybody had any other comments that they pulled out of that. But that's what I got out of rereading the survey results and trying to look at what Bowie did. So any other comments on that or thoughts that I should include when I give this to Sean? Or anything anybody else wants to put? Not hearing any, so we'll just kind of go from there. Okay. Make it a shorter meeting today. So right now I'm on item number 6. So we're going to meet next week, next Monday. We should have all our chapters at least in a draft form or a semi-final draft form. Is that correct, John? Am I missing anything on that?
Yes.
Like that semi-final draft form? So,
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are involved in making deadlines, but I'm just gonna say I trust everybody, and yes.
we'll do the best we can do on that. Mo, are you back? Nope, nope. He must have hopped off for a second. Okay.
Sorry, I'm back. I'm back.
Oh, Mo, you got, since you left,
I know.
we gave you an option to opt out. You chose not to, so you're helping to write one of the chapters with
I'm
Ryan.
just happy that the Teams call I took in the middle of this call did not cross-pollinate the audio. You guys really don't want to hear about my interactions with Deloitte. Anyway, yes, thank you for volunteering me in my absence. I feel like Ryan now.
Yeah. So any other comments or questions we have? I think I know where we are. If there's anybody, does everybody know where we are from the standpoint of wrapping this thing up? At least having everything come together by next week. Good.
I will say, Tom, good job on moving this process along, and Sean.
I'm not.
Thank you guys for pushing us these last couple of several weeks to really get closer to having an end product that we can circulate.
Well, I appreciate it. My wife always tells me I dawdle around until I have to do something, and then I get it done. So.
Well, we may have missed our March 2021 deadline, but
you know, I will tell you, we probably would have had a closer shot at doing it had we been able to meet in person. I'm not a very effective person when it comes to Zoom meetings and how we handle that, but it just slows everything down a little bit. So can't help with that. Okay.
Tom, you did a good job, and I've been to several Zoom meetings in various entities where I'm on boards. This has gone about as well as that can be expected and far better than 5 or 6 others. So congratulations.
That's always my goal, is not to be the worst, Wally.
You come out, you're in the top best on this group.
There we go. Thank you very much. Any citizens that would like to address us for an item that's on the agenda or not on the agenda? And I'm not seeing any. One thing, there are some on our future land use, Ryan, and I had made this, I think there's one issue that I didn't think that got in there, and I frankly hadn't looked at it, but I'll make a little memo and send that to you, in that there was a question of enforceability on our ordinances, and the easy answer was just when you grant extra impervious cover, you put a little conditional agreement in there that would cover it. And I'll send you what Brooke and I talked about on that before she left on holiday.
I think that's actually in the latest draft of that, but Ryan will see that on
Didn't
Wednesday.
get a chance to read it, but hopefully that is in there. Well, very good. I appreciate everybody's time today, and hopefully by next week we can get this thing on the way to being wrapped up. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ashley and Amber. And Carrie, I hadn't forgot you. So we do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, y'all.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
And
y'all.
for
Bye.
the motion to adjourn,
Move to adjourn.
Seconded.
we have a second. All those in
Third.
favor, I see no hands up, so we are adjourned. Thank y'all very much.